going to the field and training here really stinks. Being in garrison life sometimes really, really stinks. But, deployment, yeah, stinks, but you're doing your job. And so it makes it almost a little bit better.
What just share the process. Like, how do you go from that to enlisted in the Army? Like, what steps did you take?
So really, kind of went through another period of like, okay, crap, what branch do I join?
Mm-hmm.
Let me hear from, talk to a couple other people, from the church. I think it was Jack Stitzel trying to get me to join the Air Force. But yeah, and I knew I didn't want to join the Air Force just because they didn't really have anything that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I was like, crap, really, Army is my only option. Like, I'm going to totally stick my foot in my mouth. And so my mom, she kept telling me, she would come home from work and tell me about this guy that comes and uses the church building for, I guess it was National Guard, doing runs or something like that. I don't even know what he used the church for, but I know that this guy was in the Army. And so my mom gives me his contact information, and I shoot him a text, and we set up a time just to meet and talk and see what options the Army has.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, all right, whatever. I really wasn't confident, didn't really think much about it going into it, but looking back at it, I'm like, this guy started my Army career, like straight up, just started it.
Yeah.
And talked to him, and he laid out all these options that I'd never even thought of, never even heard about, which was awesome. Like, totally opened my mind up, and I was like, all right, cool. The Army is cool. So he actually went out of his way and found me the best recruiter in Georgia, like #1 rated recruiter in Georgia. And I was like, wow, okay, that is really, really cool.
Yeah.
And this guy, my recruiter, Staff Sergeant McCain, he was down in Lawrenceville, or Noonan. Sorry, I don't know where I got Lawrenceville from, but he was down in Noonan, and set up a time, called him, talked to him for a little while, and drove an hour and a half down there and started the process. And really, I mean, from the get-go, I had like this like comforting feeling. It was just so much more different than the Marine Corps, because like the Marine Corps recruiter, you could tell he didn't really care.
Wow.
And Staff Sergeant McCain, he was going out of his way for so many things, to get me squared away. And I started that enlistment process at the end of September, September 26th. And by November, he had already told me that they accepted my waiver. Like, I still had to do a medical waiver, but like they passed it, no problem. The communication was so much better.
So when did you know for certain that you'd been approved, accepted into the Army? When did that happen?
So that would be beginning of November. So I mean, it was like bam, bam, like right off the rip.
Right.
I'm going in the Army.
Yeah.
And so, January, I think, was the last time I went to MEPS, which is the medical processing facility where you decide what job you're going to do. They do your full physical exams, eyes, ears, all that stuff.
Did you report to boot camp shortly thereafter?
I'm sorry?
Did you report to boot camp shortly thereafter?
Yeah, so January 7th was my last time at MEPS. And then by the 19th of January this year, I was at Fort Benning, Georgia. So
wow. And so you went through the process.
It was quick.
Boot camp, and then you said airborne school or something after that?
Yeah. So, and this is kind of funny. So when I was in boot camp, they had 2 slots to go to Ranger selection to join 75th Ranger Battalion. They had 2 slots, and so they picked 2 guys from the whole company to go, and they gave me and one other guy from the company those 2 slots. So yet again, all through boot camp, I'm just like, this is what I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
Like, I was excelling in boot camp. I was enjoying it. I was it's boot camp, but like, I was enjoying it. I was enjoying it.
That says something, right?
Yeah, it was just like the light bulb went off, and I was like, wow, like this is what I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
And that my biggest change came in boot camp. Like, my whole outlook on especially my outlook towards my parents. That was the biggest thing that changed for me
in boot camp. In boot camp, huh?
I'm sorry?
Like, in boot camp, that's where you can look back and see the change there?
Oh, yeah. I was just like, man, I was such a brat. I was such a brat. Like, just how much my parents had done for me my entire life. I was just like, man, I am so selfish and just immature, and that was the biggest change, really.
Hey, Connor, what is it about boot camp that even teaches a young man that? Or how did you come to that conclusion, those kind of thoughts about being a brat and your parents and all that, like, in boot camp? What is it about it?
I think the biggest thing that I was lacking in my life was discipline. That was huge. Like, I was not disciplined. Like, not disciplined from doing schoolwork, to not disciplined to cleaning my room, to shaving every morning. It was just that type of thing, and you could see it in all. I could throw that back to every area of my life, like my walk with the Lord. My discipline was it wasn't there. So I didn't spend as much time in the Bible or in prayer that I needed to. And in boot camp, that's where I really like, holy crap, this is important. Like, this is life-changing stuff.
Yeah.
And so I disciplined myself into, reading every day, praying every day, and not just praying, for myself or for my family, but, for our country, for, people in the church,
Sure.
all that stuff.
Wow.
And, it really opened my eyes. Like, wow, the world is bigger than myself. I'm just so selfish and
that's
immature.
That's a great testimony. I am so encouraged to hear you share that and to articulate it and to kind of put it in the context of your story. Especially, I would have never thought that boot camp was the place where so much of that change would have taken place. But you're just saying that the experience of it and the instilling discipline in you helped to reignite and cause something to come to life there.
Definitely, yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And, so you moved from boot camp to airborne school, and then after that, you said June something. You reported to Anchorage, right?
Right. So let me rewind a little bit.
Yeah.
So I got it's called an Option 40 contract to go into 75th Ranger Regiment. I got that, signed the paperwork, blah 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 blah. And before you go to Ranger Battalion, you go to airborne school.
Okay.
So I got airborne school because I got the Option 40 contract. So after boot camp, we graduated. I went into what's called airborne hold, which was just a place where after you complete boot camp, you go there and literally just sit around and go on really meaningless details, anything from picking up cigarette butts to trying to hide from doing details. I mean, it was just a miserable place.
I got you.
Absolutely miserable.
Yeah.
So did that for 2.5 weeks, and then I finally got a class date for airborne, and then went to airborne school. Fast forward, completed airborne school, graduated, and after you graduate, they call you back to the company. And they get everybody lined up on where they're supposed to go, because you're there. Airborne school is big Army now, meaning I was in the school with, captains, majors, sergeant majors, first sergeants, which are really, high ranking people. And, but they're all the same. They're going through the school just like you.
Oh, wow.
Nobody holds really higher rank, which was really cool to experience, going straight from boot camp to that. It was very weird, but it was good to help transition into real Army. Um, so they call everybody back and they give everybody their orders. So this whole time I'm tracking that I'm going to go to RASP, which is Ranger Assessment Selection Program, which is it's another smoke fest where they just they wear you down, they all that kind of stuff, because you're trying to get into Ranger Battalion, which is it's a special operations group in the Army, and so it's something that I want to be a part of. And so I'm tracking that I'm going to this school after airborne school.
Now, what? Paul's right there. Why were you tracking that way? What do you mean when you say you're tracking?
Because I got the option 40 contract.
Okay.
In my contract, I was to go to airborne school and then go to RASP, the Ranger Selection Program.
Oh.
So right after airborne school, I was supposed to report there. So I'm waiting in line with all the other guys that are going to RASP, waiting in line to get my orders. And finally I get up to the front, I give them my name. They're looking through the file. They don't have my name. I'm like, well, typical Army, they lost my paperwork. Okay, I'll just go talk to, operations. So I'm waiting in line at operations, and I mean, the line is so long because they screwed up so many people's paperwork, but some other private sticks their head in the door and they go, hey, is there a Private McDuffie in here? And I'm like, yeah, right here. And they're like, oh, they need you in the overseas office. And I'm like, oh, what the heck?
Yeah.
Okay. So I walk over there with them, and the staff sergeant that's there, he hands me my file. He says, here's your ticket. And I go, what are you talking about? And he's like, your ticket and your orders for Alaska. And I'm like, no, I'm supposed to go to RASP. And he's like, no, you're not.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, so here we go. We're starting over again with the whole rejection process.
Yeah, really?
It was the same feeling. I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Like, I'm supposed to do this. And so another couple hours, go by of me calling all kinds of people, trying to figure out what the heck happened to my contract. And, I mean, there was no way to fight it. I had orders to show up in Alaska the next day.
Wow.
I couldn't fight it.
Wow.
So I'm like, all right, this, trusting in the Lord again, like, okay, this is his plan.
Yeah.
So, which was really cool because I had a bunch of friends from airborne school that were going to Alaska. I had a great friend from basic that was already in Alaska. And so I was like, all right, whatever. So went home, got all my cold weather stuff, came back, hopped on an airplane.
Yeah.
I was in Alaska. And from then on, there were just all these little things that kind of pointed towards, all right, this is where the Lord wants me. He wants me to be here. And after a while, I was kind of relieved because RASP, the Ranger Selection Program, it's no joke. Like it's hardcore. You got to be smart. And me coming straight from basic training, going into that, I was already at a disadvantage. Already. I had no knowledge of what the real Army was like, anything like that. So I was kind of relieved, like, okay, so I can come here, I can get some Army knowledge, I can learn basic stuff, and then I can, go into, and try that again if I want to.
Right.
So been here since June, and just I absolutely love my leadership, absolutely love my platoon, love what I'm doing.
Wow, that's great.
And just so many signs of like, this is where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah. Now give us an idea of a typical day or week, or like when you keep just saying you love what you do, you love your platoon and your team and all that. But how is life? How would you describe life the last few weeks or months or so?
Well, that is the toughest question to answer for some reason. What does a typical day look like?
Okay.
Morning PT every morning. Have to be at the company by 06. Do PT till about 7:30, 8 o'clock. Go back, get showered, changed, show back up at the company 9:30. And then from there, it's all mission dependent. Okay. Whatever is coming up in the next few weeks. If there's nothing to do, it can be anything from just cleaning weapons to picking weeds.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it can be anything. But typically, we are getting ready to go out into the field, meaning we'll either jump into the field, or we'll convoy out into the field and do different types of operations, have different missions that we're supposed to do. And so leading up to that, it takes a lot of time getting ready for that, getting the vehicles ready, getting our weapons ready, getting our gear ready, getting mentally ready, all that kind of stuff. So last week we were in the field, we jumped into the field, spent a few days out in the field, spent 5 days out in the field, and then came back late Saturday night. And so this week we've been doing recovery, meaning getting accountability of all our gear, cleaning weapons, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I'm curious to know, Connor, we got a few more minutes here before we wrap up, but you keep talking about how much you enjoy it, how much you love it, how much you just look back and kind of see the story and see where you are right now is right where you're supposed to be. But surely there have been some challenges. Like, what have been some of the most challenges or adjustments, maybe adjustments to, just go back to June. Like, okay, disappointing. You're not going to RASP. The next day you're packing up. You're on a plane to Anchorage. Boom. And so that was 3 or 4 months ago. What has been the most difficult adjustments into this military life, right?
Yeah. Golly. Really, I mean, the biggest thing is understanding how the Army works. And it's so hard to describe. But that was something that really kind of took me off guard, is how much what comes across to me and other people as being really stupid and time wasting. And sometimes it is really stupid and time wasting. But you kind of have to boil it down to, they're liable for us. We do this for a reason, because somebody has screwed it up. Every Friday at 1700, we have a safety brief going into the weekend to remind us not to drink and drive, not to do drugs. It's every single weekend. And every single weekend we have weekend counselings to where we have to spell out exactly what we're going to do every single weekend. Wow. And it's like, after you do, 10 of those in a row, you're like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever experienced.
I hear you. Yeah.
Like, this is so dumb. But you got to remind yourself, we have to do this because people are still out drinking and driving. People are still out getting caught doing drugs, things like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a very specific example, but almost all of the Army is kind of like that. I'm not trying to trash talk the Army or anything, but just little tiny things like that they don't make sense to me because I'm a private, but they're there, and those rules and those precautions are taken, because somebody screwed it up in the past.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. Well, what about last little part of our conversation here? So what does the future look like? The near future, you don't know what the far future looks like, but like what's like the next few months or year or so? Like what do you have on the horizon? What's been kind of going on in your work that it's sort of painting a picture of what might be around the corner for you personally in the Army?
Definitely. So the rest of this month, we have some small training exercises, just typical field stuff, nothing big. But I'm actually, last month I took the Ranger physical assessment test, which it's just push-ups, sit-ups, and a 5-mile run. But I took that just to, see where I was at, see if I could get in, and do Ranger school, and I passed it. And actually, I did really, really well in it. So my platoon sergeant is he's trying to fast forward me for a promotion so that I can get waived into going into Ranger school, hopefully January, February sometime. So that's like the biggest thing that's going on with me right now. Just trying to discipline myself and to trying to stay in shape.
Yeah.
It's tough when it's getting so cold out, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's been really the biggest development for me, and this would just be Ranger School, which is different than the Option 40 contract.
I see.
Ranger School is only 61 days, and it would be back in Georgia. But it would be tough. I mean, it would be really, really tough. Wouldn't have any contact with my family or friends for those 61 days. But it's a school that really sets you apart. It's a career building school.
Okay.
Just because it's all your basic stuff, and then a good majority of advanced stuff. But having that Ranger tab shows that you've got it.
Yeah.
You've shown your stuff, and so just being able to go is a real honor, and it's a great opportunity. And so
Connor, will you go to Ranger School in Georgia for 60 days and then most likely go back to Anchorage?
Yeah. So because it is just Ranger School, anybody can go to Ranger School. Like on the news, you saw the 2 females that just recently passed Ranger School. That's the school itself. There's a few weeks that take place at Fort Benning, and then they move into mountain phase up in Dahlonega, and then they move down into swamp phase down in Florida. So I would complete those 3 stages, and then I would get my Ranger tab, and then I would go back to Anchorage and just continue on with normal everyday stuff. Whereas if I try and go into 75th Ranger Battalion, I would go to RASP at Fort Benning, and then I would actually not go back to Anchorage. I would either go to Fort Benning, Fort Stewart, or Fort Lewis up in Washington, which is my plan. That is what I'm going to try and do, is get my Ranger tab and then drop a Option 40 packet and try and get closer to home and do some more, cool stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Now that leads me to really the final question here. I keep saying that, and those who know me well know that I say that often. I just become so fascinated in each of your answers. But with all the field training you're talking about in Anchorage, and airdrops, like you say, and Ranger School, the Ranger tab, and just these steps. Obviously, you're a young guy, so you wouldn't know from real experience. But do you get a sense that the Army truly is preparing you for combat? Like every little day and every little step you take is closer to truly being prepared in all the intricacies and all the requirements, and whether it be individual competencies or teamwork and your platoon and all that working together. I mean, do you get a sense that, this is not without meaning and purpose? Like this, you can see the real possibility of deploying one day. I'm asking you.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, I do feel confident in my training. Definitely do.
Yeah.
That is one thing that the Army is good at, and it is repetition. And so I do feel confident in that. But I also think about how much can I actually really prepare myself for the real thing. And I don't think you really can.
Right.
But to answer the main question, yes, I do. We kind of pride ourselves in how much we go to the field and how hard and well we actually train. Because I'm sure there are units out there that they go to the field and they just kind of piddle around and it's more like a camping trip than actual training. But we train really, really well here, and that's something that I'm really proud of. It sucks at sometimes.
Sure.
Because crap, we're going to the field again, because the field's not fun. I mean, you can only imagine it's not fun, especially up here with how cold it. I mean, I think it was -1 the last night that we stayed, so it's not fun, but we definitely get it done, and we do what we need to do, and we do it the way we need to do it.
Yeah.
And that all ties back to leadership. The leadership that I have, not only within my platoon, but my battalion commander, my my sergeant major, I mean, just outstanding guys,
Mm-hmm.
and they want us to succeed, and they want us to be better than the other units that are here,
Mm-hmm.
and we are. So
Yeah, yeah.
that
Well,
yeah.
I would assume that it's not just a career. When you start thinking about this, I don't know all the principles of military training and warfare, but this one comes to my mind that really a country wants to train up a military, so well trained and strong and that they don't ever have to they don't ever have to go to war. They don't have to put warfare into action. That would be the ideal and desire, is that you try to avoid war, but you work and train so that you can be prepared and if it does come. So these are the kind of thoughts and mindsets you have. But I would imagine that one of the next big things in your life, I mean, by huge things, big huge things, is if it does come a day where you're deployed, I mean, that'll be a new challenge. Like, it's not just kind of a dream and a childhood, like be in the military. It's not just field training. It's like you're really going to do that which you've really been training to do, the real deal. And that's a whole nother world, I would assume.
Right.
And
No, and that's something that, I've talking to guys, some of my sergeants that have deployed and things like that is, going to the field and training here really stinks. Being in garrison life sometimes really, really stinks. Mm-hmm. But, deployment, stinks. Mm-hmm. But you're doing your job.
Yeah.
And so it makes it almost a little bit better.
I see.
So that's one thing that I've heard them say, and I can completely understand that. Mm-hmm. Being here sometimes it's just like, let me go do my job. Like, actually, like, let me go do my job.
Yeah.
And that's, that's one of the things about being 11 series infantry is like, you don't get to do your job every day.
Yeah.
Only really on deployments is really when you get to do your actual job.
I see.
But yeah.
Well, Connor, this has been great. I know I've been so encouraged by it. I've learned a lot about you and your journey, just the path that God has brought you through and into, and now you've arrived at this point right here. A personal question, like when you coming home again? Like, when is your next trip home for a few days or whatever, however long of real sort of downtime and family and friendship time?
Yeah, so really glad that I was able to come home. What was that? 2 weekends ago.
Mm-hmm.
It was great to see you. Great to see everybody at church.
Yeah.
So next time I'll be home, I'm taking the red eye back December 16th. And so I'll be, I think that's the 18th is what, a Sunday. I'll be in church then on the 18th, and I don't have to return until January 2nd. So that'll really be my first big chunk of time back home.
Yeah. Now, is it possible that you will you go back to Anchorage and then possibly back to Fort Benning?
For
like when you come here for the holidays for a couple of weeks, will you know by then whether you're going to be going to Ranger School in Fort Benning or not?
I'm hoping. I'm hoping so. Yeah. That's part of what I've learned here, and I don't get my hopes up. Yeah. I just Roger Sergeant.
Yeah, right. Yeah, good. Yeah.
So ideally, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
That would be awesome to be able to get my packet pushed through, get all my physicals done, fly home and then fly back. Yeah. But no telling. I'm shooting for January, but expecting March.
Yeah.
So
okay. Yeah. That's cool.
There.
Well, Connor, thanks so much. I appreciate the time you've invested tonight. I mean, it won't be long. You'll be getting to bed because you got an early morning PT from what you said. Yep. And just know that we're proud of you, and your story encourages us. And I really hope that a lot of Grace members and friends and family listen to this podcast and listen to your story, because I think all of us have a lot to learn from how God has had his hand upon your life, even in disappointing, difficult times. And you've been honest enough to track trace those steps of the ups, the high points, but then the Home Depot parking lot low points. I mean,
you got that.
Yeah, and how a friend like Josiah and his life and decisions challenged you and encouraged you. So Thanks a lot. Keep up the good work, and we'll look forward to seeing you in December. Okay, man?
Definitely. I appreciate you taking the time to talk, and thank you for your prayers and support.
Well, that brings this episode to a close. And I hope that every word that you've heard in this conversation with Connor McDuffie has been a blessing to you and has benefited you. And let me encourage you to pray for Connor as he serves our country in the armed forces, in the Army in Anchorage, Alaska. Thanks for joining us for the Grace Again podcast program. And be sure to tune in to the next episode of the Grace Again podcast. Goodbye.